Good Wednesday morning. Let's continue with St. Luke. This is the same long chapter 12. This is, again, it's a text that says you've got to be responsive to the moment. You've got to be responsive at the moment. Don't be distracted. Be open to the moment. Watch what I'll read it here. Jesus said to the disciples, "Be sure of this, if the master of the house had known the hour when the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into." He's alert. You also must be prepared, for at an hour you do not expect, the Son of Man will come. And some of that has to do with the Last Judgment. But it means really that infinitely more than that. It means the grace moment, when you least expect it. See? Then Peter said, "Lord, is this parable meant for us or for everyone?" The Lord replied, "Who then is the faithful and prudent servant?" Key word is prudent servant, who the master will put in charge of his servants to distribute the food allowance at the proper time. Who? Blessed is that servant whom his master upon arrival finds doing so. Truly I say to you, he will put him in charge of all his property, because he was available. He was doing his job. He was doing what he was called to do. Nothing extraordinary, but what his office in life required of him. That's what he was doing. Some saint was asked, I think it was St. Anthony, not St. Francis, maybe it was St. Francis, if you knew that God was coming right at this moment, what would you do? He said, I keep doing what I'm doing. It was a great answer. Because what was he doing? Fulfilling his duties, his responsibilities, his role, given his vocation. He was doing what he was called to do. I'll keep doing what I'm doing. That's what I would do. See what he's saying? That's a great way to examine your conscience, is to say, what am I doing? What would, if Christ were here right at this moment, what would I keep doing? What would I be doing? Would I stop doing what I'm doing? Would I change it? Or would I keep on doing it? And I think the answer ought to be, I keep doing what I'm doing. Why? I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm fulfilling my vocation. I'm taking care of my wife or my husband. I'm still doing that. I'm washing dishes. Why? Because I'm supposed to wash dishes. They need to be washed. You see? What are you doing? I'm going to work. Why? Because I have to earn a living for my family, for myself. See? That's what I mean. Now, what happens if the guy's negligent? You see, if he doesn't bother, okay? He's negligent in his duties. Truly, I say it, okay? But if the servant says to himself, my master's delayed in coming, and begins to beat the men servants and the maid servants, to eat and drink and get drunk, then that servant's master will come on an unexpected day and then at an unknown hour, and will punish the servant severely and assign him a place with the unfaithful. That servant who knew his master's will but did not make preparations nor act in accordance with his will shall be beaten severely. And the servant who was ignorant of his master's will but acted in a way deserving of a severe beating, he's going to get a lighter one. Shall be beaten only lightly. Much wood, that's almost funny, but it isn't. In other words, the punishment is consummate upon the offense. Much will be required of the person entrusted with much. Still more will be demanded of the person entrusted with more. The more you have, the more you have to give an account for. What did you do with the life I gave you? What did you do with the gifts I gave you? You got to answer. You were given these gifts not for themselves, but for their contribution to the enrichment of the human family and human life. In the immediacy of your home, for instance. How good a husband were you? How good a wife? See? How good a parent? See? Did you do the minimal? Brought home the paycheck? Were you there for your spouse? Were you there for your wife when she felt lonesome, lonely? Or your husband, or the husband who comes home and he's tired, whatever it may be. The old days it was easy to talk about the wife being home, the husband being on the job. Today, if the university's any example, he'll be home doing the dishes and she'll be out living a professional life, because there are more young women in college today than there are men. What does that tell you? Who do you think can be the head of the corporations? Not a matter of time, and not much time. Yeah, right. But the point is, you're doing what you've been called to do. See, the real crime is to be not doing what you should be doing. Not that you're doing something wrong, but you're not doing something right. I think, in my 2 cents worth, more marriages fail from lack of active fidelity than it is from infidelity. In other words, you kept your nose clean, you didn't do anything wrong, but you also didn't do anything right. Having done enough marriage counseling in my 50 years in the racket, and just my general knowledge of human nature, it isn't flagrant sin that wrecks lives. It's often the sin of negligence. Failing to be present to one's spouse, failing to be present to one's children. You know, that's just the truth. More marriages fail out of loneliness than they do out of indiscretion or deliberate evil or whatever. They're too busy to pay attention. You know, one of the most wonderful things I remember about my family, I'm only now 50, 60 years later, 70 years later, I think about these things. But my father, okay, in the restaurant business, he came home at night. Okay, he didn't come home at 5. That's when he went to work. He'd come home about 10, 11. My mother would stay up. My mother was a school teacher, so she had to get up early, but she stayed up. And when my father came home, I could remember hearing them talking in the kitchen. She greeted her husband, and they talked together. The most distinctive thing I remember about the intimacy of my parental family, okay, my family life, my parents, was they talked. They talked to each other. They talked to each other. And I have to say, in my own celibate life, the thing that I found the most difficult was the loneliness that came from not having somebody to talk to walk with in an intimate way. It doesn't mean I had friends, of course, the men in the outfit and all the rest, the order. But there is a special kind of conversation of shared intimacy, which people who love each other, deeply love each other, they share. It's a communion of love on a mutually exercised journey. That's poorly put, but it's the truth. It's the truth. Talking in the kitchen. I can so remember hearing my parents talk to each other in the bedroom. Talk to each other. And one of the most beautiful things in my life were my friendship, especially with Junie, God rest her. We talked and talked and talked. Yeah. When I lived in Louisville, I used to call, and we would talk on the phone. She was a friend who walked with me, and I hope I walked with her. I was just with her daughter and son-in-law today with a grandchild, with Ben, who was also my godson. It was a companionship of the intimacy of a journey, walking the journey together. She and her husband, her family, even her parents, who I don't know if they could make much sense out of me. It's a journey in conversation. It's a journey in the intimacy of the heart and soul and mind. See? Where you shared your thoughts. You shared. You conversed. You walked together. I love that expression of walking together. One of the best pictures I have of my parents is they're walking on the beach. You know, they were old. It was 1982, I think, so it's 40-something years ago. And they were in their 80s at the time, as I remember. The picture came out in the newspaper. I told you that story. My father didn't know who my mother was. He was so senile. Yet they faithfully walked on the beach every day, and this was the middle of wintertime. They're heavily clothed, they're heavy clothes on. They were walking along the beach in West Haven. It's the best photo I have, my best photograph I have, at least published photograph or whatever you want to call it, my family. That's an intimacy. That's the intimacy of walking together. I was thinking of bringing that to my class. I wanted to show it to my kids in class. This is what intimacy looks like. This is what it looks like. They're walking together within all the feebleness that had occurred in their old age. My father did not know who he was walking, some lady. That was my mother. Yeah. And how she grieved when he finally died, even though he didn't know her for years, 5 years, 4 or 5 anyway. I remember saying, "Ma, it's over," and all the rest. But she said to me, he was still, even though he didn't know her, he was still alive. That's the intimacy of the journey, you see? That's what it is to be faithful to one another, to share in one's life, the journey of life. I've been blessed with friends, June and others who I've walked with, and I still walk with her kids. We just with Karen today, just now. We walk together. We grieve together. We laugh together. We walk together. And we love together, as it were, our way, and the way that life is allowed for us. See, that's a good story, isn't it? You have your way, and your ways are sacred. Foster the sacrality of their holiness, their beauty, and their goodness. Don't take them for granted. Don't presume anything. Don't presume anything. Treasure and actively, faithfully treasure the beloveds in your life. Don't take anything for granted, especially them. That's the truth.